Hi, everybody. We're gonna get started. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for, I don't know where the camera is, way back. Thank you for anyone on the internet who's here. Most of you already know, my name is Kristen Sinclair. I'm the Assistant Director of the Ed Transformation Program, and I'm really excited to welcome three amazing parent organizers for the panel tonight. So I'm going to introduce them quickly and then stop talking so they can get started. From this side, we have Patrice Turner, a third-generation Native Washingtonian. She has a 17-year tenure in special education and serving at-risk youth with the goal of reunifying and stabilizing families, creating equitable learning experiences, and being the voice for families that are often disregarded, left behind, or silent. After having experienced many adverse childhood experiences, ACEs herself, Patrice has long ago found her purpose in protecting Black and Brown youth, starting her career by spreading mental health awareness through performing arts-based curricula in autism programs, juvenile detention centers, and alternative schools in the DMV region. Her passion for education equity was truly ignited through her plight and advocating for her eldest of four sons, who was on the autism spectrum, through DC's educational landscape. In addition to her work at Monument Academy Public Charter School as Chief of Family and Community Engagement, Patrice remains overly engaged in DC ed policy by serving as a long list here, citywide board member of Parents Amplifying Voices in Education, PAVE, Needs Assessment Committee member of Mayor Bowser's OST Commission, community advisor with the DC Policy Center, member of DC Citywide LSAT, and Wards 5 and 7's Education Equity Committee. Welcome, Patrice. Next, we have Allison Kreiner Brown, MPA, who is an award-winning equity and community engagement practitioner, trainer, and scholar. For 20 years, she has worked at the intersections of pre-K-12 education, family and community engagement, racial equity, environmental justice, and local government. Allison's publications include Engagement for Equitable Outcomes, A Practitioner's Playbook, and the essay, quote, Engaging and Embracing Black Parents in Teaching When the World is on Fire. She is the editor of 3 publications based on Teaching for Change's nationally recognized Parent Organizing Project, Parent Principal Chats Manual, Parent Organization Equity and Inclusion Tool, and the second edition of Between Families and Schools, Creating Meaningful Relationships. She lives in Washington, D.C. with her husband and 2 children and is a proud advocate for public education. Welcome, Allison. Finally, we have first-generation Native Washingtonian, Vanessa Rubio, joining us. She is a dedicated parent leader, community advocate, and longtime champion for public education in Washington, D.C. She currently serves as president of the Brightwood Elementary School PTA and is a board member of Friends of Roosevelt, where she supports fundraising and resources for students and teachers. As a mother of 4, including a current college student and high school junior, Vanessa brings a deeply personal perspective to her advocacy. She has been actively involved in DC public schools through initiatives such as the DCPS Boundary Study Advisory Committee, and continues to organize families around issues of equity, access, and student success. She also helped launch a walking bus initiative, coordinating volunteers to safely escort students to school and improve daily attendance and community connection. Vanessa's work centers on empowering parents to have a voice in decision-making, building strong school communities, and creating opportunities for all children to thrive. Through her leadership in parent organizing, Girl Scouts, and local initiatives, she is committed to bridging gaps between families, schools, and policymakers. Welcome, Vanessa. And we are lucky to have our very own Dr. Mingzu Dang facilitating tonight.
Make me shy.
Yeah. Everyone knows the structure of the evening. We're going to have about an hour, right, of panel discussion, a quick break to get some food so you can eat, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So I know that you all have lots of great questions to ask this amazing panel. All right, take it away.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sinclair, for introducing our wonderful panel here. So I'm gonna go around and let you go around. I'm not gonna go around the room. So really quickly introduce yourself, your name and your residency You would want to start with Monica over here?
Sure. Hi, I'm Monica Felix, and my residency placement is with fourth grade at LaSalle Backus Elementary.
I'm Victoria Stanford, and I'm at Oyster Adams in nurse.
Gabriela Mendez, and I'm also at Oyster Adams in Denver.
I'm Elizabeth, and I'm here with my friends, so
Hi, I'm Katsia, and I'm at the Center for Social Justice at Georgetown.
Hi, I'm Jimena Martinez, and I'm doing my residency in Oyster Adams, the third grade.
I'm Megan, but I'm in the program next year, so I'm just checking it out.
I'm Tiffany, nice to meet you guys. Right now I'm with Albert Schenker Institute with AFT.
I'm Hannah. I'm at the Capitol Campus Student Affairs.
Grace, I'm also at the Center for Social Justice.
Hi, I'm Leela. I'm at the Georgetown Scholars Program.
My name is Philip Milano, and I'm at KRDC.
I'm Sandra Claire. I'm working with After School Alliance.
I'm Isabella. I'm working with the DC Office of the Student Advocate.
Hi, I'm Nirali. I'm teaching at a DC bilingual fourth grade elementary.
You go ahead.
Hi, I'm Venus. I'm in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion with Arlington Public School.
I'm Eric. I'm a first grade classroom aide at Noyes Elementary School in Northeast.
I'm Kene Turner at Stoddard Elementary School teaching first grade.
I'm Anaya Harris. I'm at Raymond Elementary teaching first grade.
Gerardo Hernandez, and then I support first and second at Creative Minds.
Thank you, and thank you for being here on a Friday again. Okay. How are you doing? Spirits high?
Yes, all right.
Yeah,
Friday.
All right, so just like Dr. Sinclair stated, we will have about 1 hour with, a panel discussion with questions that I've prepared and shared with the panelists. So during that 1 hour, if you have any burning questions, burning follow-up questions you must ask at the moment, please raise your hand. And then we will go to break so you can eat your food, and then in the end, we'll have Q&A. So I know all of you have prepared some questions for the panelists. If any of those questions you don't feel like it's addressed, or you still have more wonders, so please use extra time to ask those questions, okay? So I have an opening statement. So students and families in DC are facing challenges today. The mayor has announced her intention to zero out the pay equity fund for early childhood educators and the cut to child care subsidy program in fiscal year 27. This is considering opting into the federal tax credit scholarship voucher. If instated, will drive more funding away from public schools and widen the education opportunity gap in the city. ICE is still in this neighborhood, disrupting families' lives and terrifying children with food. DCPS special education was recently investigated by the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, who had found the district discriminates against children with disabilities, to name a few of the challenging issues with they face. However, this is also a city of long, strong community organizing and resistance. Here is our evidence. Okay, so what does it look like to organize and advocate for educational equity as a parent? How can teachers and policymakers build power together with parents? I'm so thrilled to have three of our city's very own parent organizers with us today to help us think through this big idea. And shout out to Dr. Kristen Sinclair and our alum, Caroline Pryor, for connecting me with our wonderful panel. All right, so yes, thank you. So to begin, could you please share a bit about why you became a parent organizer? We'll start with Allison.
So good evening, everyone. So I'm Allison, she, her. So how I got into this, so from undergraduate,
I graduated with a degree in US history, and I knew I didn't want to go be a professor, but I wasn't quite sure which direction I wanted to go. But I've done a lot of tutoring. People are always like, you'd be a great teacher. So I did, I'll go ahead and just say the big teacher prep program that many people do, which is another conversation for another day. But that did place me, I said, I wanted to teach where I would be needed and be useful. And I wanted to, see was this a career that I wanted to explore. If I come in through a traditional teaching program, I might actually still be in the classroom. But again, that's a conversation for another day. So I taught middle school, 7th and 8th grade. Shout out to anyone doing middle school. I loved the kids. The classroom was not the right space for me. Again, I think that's in part how I came in. And so then I actually switched into doing youth development and after school. So, and I loved it because I still got to work with students. I still got to work with schools and with educators. And then I decided, I want to get, I really wanted to stay and do this work, but I also wanted to make sure I had the skills to do it, because wanting to do good is not the same thing as being prepared and having the skills and the knowledge to do good. So when I was looking at kind of graduate program that I want to do, I came across the MPA, Master's in Public Administration. It's a really good degree for folks who are interested in government, nonprofit, and different forms of public service. So I did that at GW, and while I was in my grad program, we were all required to take program evaluation, which is, of course, I recommend for anybody doing anything anywhere. And we had to do, a practicum working with a community organization. And the organization that I got assigned to is called Teaching for Change, which is still around. It's a nonprofit located in the U Street area. Most people knew it because when the Poets first opened, Teaching for Change actually ran the bookstore for the first 10 years or so. So that was under my portfolio. So we had a social justice bookstore, super proud of that work. And the organization was also doing family engagement using a community organizing approach through what's called the Telling Stories Project. So I actually got connected to the organization because I was a graduate student doing a program evaluation project. But because I had worked in schools and worked in communities, as I'm on the project going out to meet, you were probably in some of the meetings I went out to at first. So Vanessa put me into this. Yeah. So I was organizing at Brightwood Education Campus. That was or elementary school now. Yeah. So that was one of the schools that I organized that. And we were laughing when we came in because I remember Vanessa's name on all of the sign-in sheets, like for everything. And so as I was, sort of observing the work, I was like, this is great. Like, this is really good work. Like, I really understood where it was coming from. And lesson to you all for where you are in your careers right now. It ended up actually being a semester-long interview for me, because when we got to the end of the spring semester, their associate director had left and they were looking for a new associate director. They asked me to apply. So I went in for the job interview. They already knew me. I've been working with them for months. And by the end of it started with, tell us about yourself. They kind of already knew me. And it ended with, so these curtains in the office can be changed, if you like. And so I went on to manage the program that, as a graduate student, I wrote the logic model for and developed the surveys for. And so that was really how I got into it. I had been in education and I had been working in schools, and it ended up just being a great opportunity for me to still do curriculum work, especially using my history background, to still be in and out of schools, and to be able to do advocacy at the citywide and even the national level. So there were actually a lot of times I went from parent centers, because I managed the team, which was a phenomenal team. And Vanessa knew some of the teachers, phenomenal team of organizers. So I always say I got to jump in and shadow with them and support them. And so I would often go, I'd be standing out in front of a school, some morning, then go into the parent center, then go check in with the principal, and then, kind of pop by a few teachers' classrooms. And I was able to do that in schools across the city and working with different populations, which really gave me a great perspective, not only of working with parents, but actually seeing, in particular with the public schools, like seeing it as a system and seeing what the challenges were and the opportunities and the people that make up the system. So yeah, that was how I got into the work. I was the associate director and the manager of the Telling Stories Project for 10 years. The pandemic, when schools shut down for that year, they shut our work down. So I had a career transition after that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of parents, just like Vanessa here. I mean, I became a parent myself during that time period. So I have a second grader and a sixth grader now. It's really funny when I run into people in the store because my sixth grader is taller than me now, and I'm like, that was the baby, right? That was the baby. They were in the meeting and such too. And then I just became just so not just inspired, but like truly educated by the parents that I was organizing with, about why we really need to do this work, how to do it and how to do it with people. So I continue to be involved, and we'll get into more of that later. But it was a very sort of intentional but unintentional path that got me there, and has kept me there.
Thank you very much. And then I really appreciate when you highlight the importance of like being in the community and slowly build those connections. And then also learning from the parents, right? Even if you're put in a leadership position. Thank you very much for that. And by the way, we have a lot of folks who are interested in culturally sustaining pedagogies here. So definitely check out Teachers for Change, the Zen Project, Great Thinking Schools. I think there's someone also connected. Yeah. So if you want to do that kind of work in DC, you want to check out. Vanessa.
Ooh. Why did I start? I was a new mom, pre-K 3 here in DC. The school where my son was attending was my school, so I held it very close to me. And one of the biggest struggles that I saw was the language barrier. The translation to documents or to information was not getting through to parents. Therefore, as a bilingual speaker, I said, oh, I can help. And the school had already started within a few months of me joining. They started with Teaching for Change, who used to get us together every Wednesday, Tuesdays or Wednesdays. Gather a group of parents, created a connection with them. As I created connections, I started seeing the need of having that language barrier met. It was just pretty big, whether it was a Spanish speaking parent that just wasn't getting the information they needed from their teachers or the school staff, or an Amharic parent. So therefore, I went on and started a PTA. And, growing up, that's all you know, it's a parent organization. I started up the PTA and then just started bringing parents in. It is a struggle to bring them in, especially nowadays. You really have to learn how to meet them halfway, whether it's creating a group chat or some who are tech savvy will go to a listserv, or even just creating little meetup places, whether it's coffee with your teacher in the morning or after school. Started creating little pockets like that just to get parents in the door. One of the things I love most from my advocacy work at my school or any other school, Teacher Appreciation Week. It is a week where we turn around and have parents actually show appreciation, but also we welcome parents in the door to volunteer and actually get to meet our staff and our teachers and get a feel of what the building is actually like with our students. So I could say I do my advocacy work for Teacher Appreciation Week.
And finally on that.
Thank you very much for like it's really important to help the parents and the teachers, build the close relationship, right? And then for our teachers here, if you ever wonder how you could do better with family engagement, find your parent leaders in the community.
Always find your parent leader. As a PTA president, I go to the teacher and say, because I've already built a report with them, say, which parent do you see that's available, interested, hand over their information, and then I follow through, and next thing you know, they're one of our best volunteers in school. So always keep out an eye for that, for those key parents.
But let's go to Patrice.
All right, so I'm Katrice Turner again. I feel like after Allison and Vanessa, I'm gonna go completely rude. I started started my journey into parent advocacy because I was mad. I'm going to keep it real. I was very, very upset. And we were kind of chatting before we started this panel tonight about how some of the biggest movements started because someone was sad, frustrated, or angry. In my personal journey, I had already been an educator, been in the educational space, but now I was a new mom. I have 4 boys now, only 2 at that time. And my son was going through the evaluation process. We felt that he may be on the autism spectrum, which he is. At the time, we were still unsure. But I mean, amazing student academically. His test and assessment scores, phenomenal. So the school felt like, oh, he's fine. He's meeting all of our benchmarks. He's exceeding our benchmarks, so he's fine, but he was struggling. Additionally, I had just left working at the Juvenile Detention Center. And while there, I just remember having a staff meeting where someone just randomly just wanted to blurt out a fact. Yeah, 63% of the population here is IEP or 504. Again, so now I'm in this space where I'm looking at my son, who I'm getting phone calls about being in the dean's office, but we don't want to do this evaluation because he's meeting our benchmark. It's going to cost us money, but he keeps being penalized. And all I could think about was the 63% of my boys at my juvenile detention center that I served who had IEPs or 504s, who I now felt like they were disserviced. I can bet any amount of money that they were disserviced in their educational spaces. Their parents were not informed. Their parents do not have the confidence, based on their lack of information, to properly advocate for their child. So I'm starting to flip the tables. Really, really. And that's what really started me on my way. And I'm grateful that at that time, and I'm still at Monument Academy Public Charter School, that I had a founder and a boss who said, well, hey, now that you are navigating into this space, I found a parent organization that's still affiliated with Parents Amplifying Voices in Education. We're DC based. I had started doing work with them, really learning policy. Like, that's groundwork with PAID. We teach every single parent policy first and who the policymakers are and what your rights are. As the founder of our LEA at the time was just like, hey, we don't have a family engagement department. Do you want to start one? And I'm like, who, me, girl? Like, my whole background at the time had been behavior and pretty much criminal justice. And I'm just like, I don't even know where to begin. She said, you have all of the skills. And we noticed that not only do the students gravitate towards you, even though you are functioning in a behavioral role, all of their parents talk to you. So let me know when you're ready to start. And we're gonna just, she bullied me a little bit. I love you, Mrs. Bloomfield. But and that's how my journey started, to not only advocate for my son. Again, I had been in education at that time for 8 years and still couldn't find the words to properly advocate for my own son. And I've been in the work ever since.
Thank you very much. And then it really piqued my interest when you talked about the policy education that provides to the parents the importance of both capacity, like when you pull parents into this advocacy work.
Yes.
I'm gonna move on to our second question. If we don't have any, okay. So you do a lot of work, right? Like we were like laughing a little bit when we were like reading your bio. So besides your role as organizers, you are also parents, educators, scholars, and many more. You make conscious decisions to spend your time and energy for the community around you. Can you share a little bit about what kinds of advocacy and organizing work you do and what motivates you of this both?
All right.
Yeah, we'll start with Patrice.
Okay. Well, to start, what I love to do, I've been kind of conned as the translator, like that's my nickname. I'm also a data nerd, so I love to dive deep into the data to transcribe it, to translate to others. So it starts there, making sure that parents or any stakeholder honestly feels confident enough or is aware enough that you have a story that's worth being elevated. Many do not feel that they have a voice. And so much of the work that I do and love to do is isolating that voice. You do have a voice. Your voice does matter. You may not know the platforms in which you are able to utilize that voice. So let's isolate your story. Let's bring it up out of you. Let's build your confidence. And then let me teach you where these platforms exist, and who should hear this story, who actually needs your story. I think a lot of parents and families do not feel, one, that their voice and stories matter, but they don't recognize that these policymakers need you. They need to hear what your experience is. These teachers, school leaders, principals, admin, superintendents, they need the information that you have based upon your personal life experience. And a lot of parents and families do not recognize that they too are subject matter experts. Nobody knows your child better than you. You are a content expert. Bring that expertise to the table. You deserve a seat at the table. And you know, when you mentioned equity in your opening statement, too many people, and being a native Washingtonian, and just growing up in the DMV area, now my children being in DC schools, too many parents and families have grown comfortable and complacent with equality and don't recognize the difference between equality and equity, or what equity should look like, right? Every space should be accommodating you, not just your child, but you as a parent as well, to make sure that you have a proper seat at the table and a round table so that everyone is seen and everybody's voice is heard in the same exact manner. So I would say it starts there, and also just really diving deep into the different modalities in which parents and families learn. I think that's something that as educators, I know initially when I started my education journey that I did not take it to consideration. Not even just so much as far as the language barrier, but when I think about time or when I think about generation. So for instance, I noticed at my LEA that the majority of my parent population are Gen Z parents with Gen Z and Alpha children. And then there's a large gap. There's no millennials or Xers like me. There's just boomers. There's boomers, so grandparents raising Gen Z Alpha babies. And then there's Gen Z parents raising Gen Z and Alpha babies. Just like my Gen Z parents, just like their kids, they don't want to read a 6-paragraph email. They're like, girl, Miss K, can you send me the pictures? If you don't mind, record it. Like, send a little video. I have 3 minutes, right? And my boomers are just like, hey, where's the dinners? Invite me into the school. I don't know how to work this technology. So you have to know your stakeholders' receptive styles and the different modalities in which they learn. So I love to teach. I love to figure that out from parents and families. And then so much of the work that I love to do is then have that conversations with teachers and school staff members and even policymakers on how to actually grasp your clientele, the populace you're trying to speak with.
I was listening to Catrice. Can you say the question again?
What kinds of advocacy and organizing work you do and what motivates you?
Yeah, okay. So while I was at Teaching for Change, the work was direct in the schools. So really, we were actually an equity measure. So we, you know, I had a team, we were a nonprofit, and so we would partner with the school. We only worked with schools where the principal either invited or, you know, was open and welcome to us. Those of you who are in schools can probably appreciate if the principal does not support it. It is not going to move. And that was something I would always make sure my staff was aware of. We don't have any authority in the school. Nobody has to actually do anything that we say, which really gets back to what is community organizing sort of in the first place, because that was something that we were always, that was something I would always coach my staff on, in organizing how we were operating in the schools. And so as Vanessa was saying, we would actually start the year with just a lot of welcome back meetings, a lot of just sort of getting to know you, get parents in the door, meet people out. We really, really targeted drop off and pick up, particularly drop off in the morning. Every single day those kids have to be dropped off, and every single day those kids have to be picked up by somebody. And I can tell you, even the best principals that I work with, they're the ones who are out on the curb. They're out on the curb at some point, and we would be out there with them, but it would be funny because people knew about Teaching for Change's work and they'd be like, okay, well, what are y'all organizing on the way this year? What are y'all organizing on? And I'd be like, well, it's September still. We're still getting to like know people. We're still bringing people in. So it's like, I can't actually tell you what the year is going to look like. There's a few things we're going to do. We're going to support and help facilitate a monthly meeting with the principal. So we know we're going to do that. At some of our schools, we have parents reading in classes. I know you were reading in class. It's bilingual, sometimes trilingual. I still have some of the books that have actually, I think I have one in here. It has multiple languages in it. So there were a few things we knew sort of from a family engagement perspective that, especially if we'd already been working with the school, but what were the issues that parents were really focused on or that were sort of like rising up? That always took time sort of to see. And I would always say, once the third person says something, somebody kind of drops something or say something. Did you get into aftercare? No, we didn't get into aftercare. Did you know this? Did you? And I said, by the time the third parent said something, I said, okay, we got something here. We start asking, sort of questions. Who else is this impacting? And so, and that's really kind of where that would stem from. So we're meeting on Wednesday. Some days, I know some years it was Tuesday, some years it was Wednesdays. Some places the parents was able to be open every day. We had one school where there was Monday moms. It was Tuesday. I forgot what Tuesday was. Wellness Wednesdays. On Friday, like the parent coordinator had something going on basically every day of the week. So, and we just encourage people to pop in, just pop by, just 5 minutes, come in and say hi, come in, get some coffee. I've been to have a lot of Costco parents that are coffee. Let me tell you. And sort of build those relationships and get people talking because you don't understand that somebody else may have your issue as well until you actually have the spaces and until you actually start to like talk about it and share. So you have to create those spaces where people feel comfortable and where they can connect about the things that they have in common. And when we are in the school, what we all have in common is our kids are here. Our kids are here. And that is always a uniting factor. And even for teachers and educators, like when you all care about our kids, we can tell. We can tell. And that's something that we all have in common as well. And so depending on what the issue was, it would be really interesting because sometimes it was like, well, let's go talk to the principal about this. And, maybe we need to come up with a plan with some teachers. Sometimes it would be the weirdest thing. Do you remember the poll at Brightwood? It was like it was like a random poll out in the out in the field. Out in the field. And the kids are like we're like, there's this poll here where the kids are like trying to play. And it would just be really interesting, the things that would come up, because then you have to say, okay, well, how do we get this issue addressed? All right, who can address the issue? And so then you have to start asking questions. And so for a lot of parents, just even, especially if you're working with parents, and not only parents who are not necessarily from this country, but even parents who grew up here, people who grew up here and went through the schools don't necessarily feel comfortable asking questions. And a lot of families that we work with, parents are not socialized to ask questions of the teacher, to ask questions of the principal, much less to challenge them or to ask for something to be done. And so we would do a big part of our organizing work was just encouraging people to talk about what they were seeing, the sort of questions and things they had. And then we say, okay, well, let's get 3-4 of us and go talk to the principal about it, right? Get people in groups to go, or let's see if we can put that on the agenda for the next monthly meeting. So we would help to create and facilitate these spaces. And oftentimes the issue, including a poll, would quickly go beyond the principal. So then now you have to start figuring out and start kind of mapping up, well, what's the next layer? What's the next level? Sometimes it was all the way to the council and to the mayor. And so that's how I really started to learn, because you'd have an issue and you have to figure out, well, who can actually solve it? Well, it seems like they can solve it, but actually Department of General Services, DGS manages this. So now we got to figure out sort of who to call and who can help us figure out who to reach out to. So what ended up happening, especially because I was working across so many schools, is I was also able to hear the commonalities of issues and where in the system it was continuing to fail parents and students. And, even a part of the system that people don't realize, but a part of the system in DC, and I think y'all can attest to this, is particularly for DCPS, when your school is having funding issues or sort of major issues, because we don't have a school board that directly addresses the issue in the schools. If DC Public Schools doesn't address it, you go to the council. Like, You shouldn't have to, but that's really where people end up going. And so the annual budget hearing, the DCPS budget hearing, if you are an education student and you plan to stay here in DC, tune into the DCPS budget hearing. Watch the hearing. You will learn more than you could learn in any book, article, or anything else about what is actually going on in our public schools by watching the budget hearing. And so, but for a lot of parents, people can't take off work to go down to the Wilson building. You don't know what time you're going to be testifying. I can't come at 10, but I don't go up until 2:30.
PM.
Sit down. It's like 400 people on the list last year. It used to be 130 when I was going regularly. And so what I would do, what I had the privilege of being able to do because I was doing this for work is I would say, all right, I would collect the testimony. What are the stories? What are the issues? And my team and I, we would go and most of our testimony would be us reading out what parents had said, because just like Patrice said, your story, the thing that you see, that is actually more powerful than you know, especially when we can put it in the right place and give it the right context. And I mean, I've told, given testimonies and stories at council where they only believed me because it was me and they started recognizing me after a while. And so, and that was one of the ways we were able to get attention to things. But then what that also did is it started to network me with, well, who else is coming? Because once you go testify, once you go the next year, you start to see some familiar faces and you're listening to what people are advocating for. And so that was how I also started to get connected with, and then I became a parent, Ward 7 Education Council, Ward 8 Education Council. Some of the groups, I heard After School Alliance, got connected with 21st Century Schools Fund, Washington Teachers Union. I remember when Empower Ed started. I remember when PAVE started. Because what would also, the Fiscal Policy Institute, the DC Fiscal Policy Institute has been one of the top supporters of those of us who do education advocacy work. Because I don't have the budget numbers. I don't do the numbers. I talk to the people. I don't do the numbers. And so we start kind of calling and say, well, who can help us figure out this? Who can help us figure out? And so that started to kind of network people who are really working towards the common purpose of improving our public schools. And I say we're for excellence and accountability. So that for me, I started getting involved in different groups. People are always like, you look so familiar. And I said, I'm in a lot of meetings. I don't know which meeting it was, but I'm in a lot of meetings. And so I actually ended up being, I was able to start as a Teaching for Change rep and then just continued on because I was already in these spaces and I had kids and I was fully invested and I was literally doing the work. It's like, I would do this for free. So I can't do it as much now, but I'm still involved. So I ended up actually being one of the founders of what's called the Coalition for DC Public Schools and Communities, C4DC, which literally a C4DC schools, I think, publicschools.org. It's all the ward education councils. It's like the Fiscal Policy Institute, Teachers Union, Teaching for Change, a number of groups who specifically are advocating to have excellent public schools. And we all got together because literally it was all the same people who would come and testify every year. We were like, maybe we should meet on a more regular basis. And that, sort of grew other connections. And that has been expanded. The last thing I'll say, and I don't want to pass to Vanessa, especially over time in those relationships. I know we'll get into this, but relationships are really important to this work. Everything. And you don't have to, you don't have to jump sky high up here, but just, those relationships and those connections and showing up as who you are, people will recognize and respond to that. And so last year, when we had the big budget crisis because of the continuing resolution, right? So DC was gonna lose 1.1 billion of the budget. Everybody was talking about that. And I was in a meeting, talking about word education. And it was like everyone was talking about and was joking around with, well, we weren't joking, but I don't know if folks know the name of the doctor now, LaJoy Jonathan Law. Yes, who's the Ward 8 State Board of Education rep. So we were in a meeting and she's like, Congress is messing with our kids. We need to go up there and drop those kids off. So, well, no, we're not gonna drop them off because clearly we don't care about children. I said, but yeah, exactly, right. And but actually, DCPS doesn't have school on Thursday or Friday. Yeah. So we said, you know what? oh, we should get people to go to the campus. And let's make some calls. And we said, okay, well, we don't do field stuff. So let's call Free DC. Hey, Free DC, we got this idea. What do y'all think? Okay, what should we call it? Recess at the Capitol. Boom. That was a Monday night. We were in that meeting. We ended the meeting early because we were like, no, I was like, no, actually, I gotta send a real big email. I sent big emails. I said, because I like to get through. So I said, hold on, I gotta send a big email to Free DC, Care DC, Care Anacostia, yeah, John A. Christina. I made flyers, and between the four of us who were at that, each of us have been doing parent organizing for more than 10 years. We were like, people will come. So we got them on board, a few other partners, Empower Ed, DC Action, Teachers Union, and we were like, okay, everybody's on board, let's blast it out. We came up with the idea and emailed everybody on Monday. Tuesday, we had a flyer, started circulating that, getting sign-offs. Wednesday, we had one prep meeting. And Thursday morning, we had 1,000 people and kids. We were outside. And so the everything from those just those little, seemingly little actions in the classroom, or just even connecting parents. Hey, how did you get this done? Or who should I call? All of that can really build. And that was really kind of one of those moments where it really kind of all coalesced. And yeah, I mean, I'm in it. I'm here. I'm in DC. I'm raising my kids here in DC. And it's a beautiful community to really be a part of. Those of you who are in your school communities, I really hope you really start to understand and appreciate the beauty in those school communities, because that's really what we bring to this work. We bring love to it. That's really always what's behind it at the end of the day.
Thank you very much, Allison. Lisa?
I co-echo both of them, but I can say I do it mainly to keep that connection with parents, bridging that gap, meeting them halfway with their language barrier. I like to create those spaces where the English speakers can speak to the non-English, and we can meet, because at the end of the day, we all have the same problems. The catch is that the non-English speakers just don't know where to go and voice their concerns. So therefore, creating those spaces, whether it's a group chat that you'll have one parent say, oh, it's in Spanish, I can't read it. But creating those spaces, whether it's in Spanish or Amharic or any other language, and having them, sometimes I use my Google Translate back and forth to get the message out to parents. Just making that connection with them and bringing them to that safe space where, we can communicate, we can express ourselves, we can get resolutions to our issues. Or even events like the Recess at the Capitol. When I got that email, I was like, oh, in my space, we have a lot of immigrant parents. Many said, oh, we're not going down there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's see if we could organize a few parents here that can take a few kids. I mean, we didn't have school those days. So it's just, I enjoy organizing my parents, empowering the ones that believe that they can't or they don't have the time, but they are willing to make the time. They're willing to show up.
Yeah.
That's what I enjoy the most about my advocacy work with them. It's making those connections, making it work for them, because there is a way. I mean, wherever there's a will, there's a way.
It is possible until it is impossible. That's how you have to start. It's possible until it is impossible.
Thank you all. That's wonderful. I just want to quickly just share like one thread I saw across all of your insights. It's the word build. So like you build parent voices. These could look like a coffee talk where you have coffee chats, you build those connections, help each individual parent learn how to navigate the system. It could be like a small pocket of parents where they start to share their voices to learn about their shared, but also maybe different concerns about schools, right? To help the English speaking families to realize, oh, so the maybe Spanish, Amharic speaking parents are facing somewhat a different barrier that you wouldn't even think about in your daily life. And also then you could go, and then you're also building a coalition, right?
Yes.
In the city across the parental groups and across the advocacy. So that's what I want to share from what you shared. Thank you very much. Do we have any follow-up questions? The next question When you think about the landscape of education policy decision-making here in DC, where and how do parents have power to influence change? And this time we'll start with Vanessa.
Where do parents have power?
Yes.
In their voice.
Yes.
Parents have power with their voice. As parent organizer, we have to guide them on how to use that voice. As teachers or staff, same way, we have to guide them as to how to use it. Whether it's through an organization like PAVE or Teaching for Change or Empower Ed, is organizing them, letting them know that even though they don't speak English, they can still testify. They can still write it. With Teaching for Change, what we used to do was we would get parents, teach them how to create a testimony, whether it was in Spanish or Amharic. And then we would have a translator translate them, and then they would come back, sign it off, and we would get them to the right person. So when it comes to policy, it's making sure those voices are amplified, that they're being heard, that they are recognized, and that parents can also see the turnaround, the results of that advocacy work. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes it takes a year or two. I can say for me, it's been 15 years, but I have seen that I have paved the way. My oldest is now 19, but I can say I have paved the way. We went from advocating to turn these education campuses into elementaries and have a middle school. My ward didn't have middle schools. These were unused buildings at the time. We advocated to have a new building, Ida B. Wells Middle School, and to rehabilitate McFarland Middle School. So therefore, that's how those schools came about. It was parents advocating to bring the middle school system back because our kindergartens were looking at the teenagers kiss in the middle of the hallway or on the corners. So, those are the issues we dealt with having them all in that one building.
Pre-K to 8.
Pre-K to 8. So I can say I've seen my advocacy work go through. I've seen it, how it's changed in policy and how our parents are key into voicing those changes.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Yeah, so I'm going to come at this question a different way in terms of sort of where and how do parents have policy. If you kind of think, when you're saying, it's just, I'm a parent, starting with a kid, all the way up to like the major decision makers in the state. Every single level, literally every single level. I can give so many points from, that parents speak up and about, issues going on in the classroom. Okay, well, let's rethink the homework policy. So many things are coming home and we can't read it. Okay, forcing the school. Boy, we did a lot of that, right? With like really forcing the school to say, you have to send things home in multiple languages. You have to figure it out, and holding them accountable when they don't. And then also further going and saying, we need the staffing and we need the support to do this. Our schools are stronger in so many ways, shapes, and forms because of things that parents have pointed out. And I'm not just going to say complain, but I'm going to say corrected in terms of what our kids and families needed. I've worked with, and I have been a part of multiple efforts to say, this principal that we have here is not the right fit for our community. They are not advocating for our children the way that we want to see. This is not the right fit. And that impacts everyone in the school, especially when the teachers get upset. Because let me tell you what, as a parent, don't mess with my kid and do not mess with the person who was teaching my child for 6 hours of the day. Don't mess with my teachers now. All right, that's a teacher retention. Yes, we want to keep our teachers. We want them to be supported. Okay. Going up, so I worked with a couple of schools that you talked about modernization and building. I worked with, it's now Boone Elementary in Ward 8. It used to be Orr Elementary in Ward 8. And the stories that I brought to council from just the building I won't go into it because we could be here literally for the rest of the night. But so it took parents getting together and just one quick example I'll say from OR. So there have been a few education experiments that DC has tried, other places have tried, DC as well. All the education campuses of pre-K through 8. Brightwood was one, LaSalle Backus, one of my dear schools, used to be an education campus. The parents were like, this is not working. This is not working. And then even the teachers in the schools were like, especially for the middle school, they're like, we're resourced as an elementary school, so we can't give the middle schoolers really what they need. So that switch, and that took some years of advocacy. That came about because this parent was saying, notice this parent was saying, notice that. And then these voices grow louder into a chorus to the point of where decision makers cannot help but to say we have to act on them. And people just don't realize it starts from your voice and your voice. But yeah, War Elementary, the school was built in 1970, 71. There were schools, I'll go ahead and say, on this side of town that had been modernized 4 and 5 times over. That school had never been touched. It was so old that the company that made the boiler went out of business. So those kids would lose school 2 or 3 days of school each year because when they would get too cold or too hot, the boiler would bust. And they couldn't actually order parts for it because the company didn't exist. So DCPS would have to have somebody come and basically rig up the system. And I mean, just a number of other stories. And what OR particularly did, calling out the hypocrisy of you're building new parking lots, this, that, and the other. We want more for our soccer fields, and we need to have an elite, this, that, and the other. And like, this school has not been touched. And I have parents telling me, because we're going to read in the classrooms, the open floor plans was another experiment where instead of, I don't know if anybody's been in an open floor plan school, but instead of, classroom, the whole floor, it's basically bookcases that separated the idea of like, we want things to flow, partitions or whatnot. And so we would have parents come and they're like, I'm here to read in the classroom and I'm getting distracted by the other first grade classroom that's 2 bookshelves over. And so that was another one that DC went away from, and it wasn't because of the kids, it was because the parents spoke up, especially when the educators supported them. So one of the things that came about is in DC, we have what's called the PACE Act, which now I can't even think of exactly what it stands, PACE. Now I really can't even think of what it stands for, but it came about in part because the parents at OR were so fed up of getting passed over in their modernization that they went to council, and council actually came up with a new formula for how to rate which school should be modernized and when. So it includes when was it first built, when was when was the last time it was modernized, looking at the population. So there have been a number of things. The Schools First and Budgeting Act, if you follow DC education. DC Council stepped in and said, DCPS, you can't have this school is going to lose 5 teachers one year, and then the next year they get 3, and then they lose 7. So it's to stabilize school funding. So, just a lot of things that people speak up about. It really is important to create spaces and encourage people to speak up. Teachers are a big part of that as well, of encouraging parents to speak up, of going to the union and helping to relay these kinds of issues. All the way up, we force the mayor, we force council's hands on things. So it's every single level from your individual child's education, completely up and down the ladder run. Always.
Thank you, Katrina.
I would actually say this is like probably my favorite part of the advocacy work is teaching folks how to navigate. My family would joke that never ask me for directions because I would Christopher Columbus you would be in all the wrong places. However, when it comes to, I'm so bad. I'm like, you make the right at the tree. I'm that person. But when it comes to navigating through the DC landscape, like I feel like that's my jam. And once I learned, I'm like, this is the information that parents and families need to know. So there's opportunities and platforms at every level. We can go super, super micro, and that's your communities, that's in your school, your local ANCs, your school leaders. You take it to that next step. That's where you have your DC council, or not even DC council yet, but also like the Office of the State Superintendent, or if your child's in a charter, the DC Public Charter School Board. Then you have the DC council, and then we're talking to the mayor. Then you need to go to the feds, then we're going to the feds next. And while that hierarchy is important and it does matter, advocacy and getting your story shared and getting your concern met is not linear. And I want folks to know that it's not linear, right? So you may see the straight up and down trajectory. However, that teacher's not answering you, go talk to this dean if it's this type of concern. Or, hey, what you're describing, you may need to go speak with the SPED coordinator. Hey, I guarantee you, like you all were mentioning about a poll outside, go talk to that ANC because they'll probably get some stuff moving and shaking out of your fields. If the school is not respecting your need to have a conversation or come to the table, especially in any type of special education services, you haven't had your amendment meetings, or your students have behavioral concerns, there's a manifestation, go to the office of the student advocate, go to the office of the ombudsman. Here's when you veer and branch off. So much of, I feel like, the disconnect when it comes to parents getting their concerns met is simply they just don't know where to go. Or a lot of times when we are in crisis, like I started off with this panel, you just want to flip the table. You're going to yell and scream at everybody. You don't know that you should just go yell and scream at this person, right? So having that branch, that tree, if you will, to know that you are the roots of said tree, but here's all the various ways in which you can branch off to assess a need and address a need. But parents should be everywhere. And I do want to amplify, because I know a lot of people don't necessarily know about it, but every year in January, in tandem with the nationwide school choice week in DC Pay, we do a DC Parents Voice and Choice Week, where we invite parents of the city literally to sit across from every DC council member, or we get as many agency leads like DBH, or all of them at the table as well. Even the mayor, the past 2-3 years, we set parents in front of the mayors to address their concerns. So it happens every January. We like to share that out to get more parents, families, and those, even if you're not a parent, those in the work who want to empower parents to come in those spaces, because then those policymakers and the council members, they tell you where to start. Where to start your advocacy journey, or where to take your concerns. And a lot of times what we've experienced, especially the past 2 years in these crazy societal times, they say, hey, I'm not as informed in this concern that you have. Teach me and I will take it to the next level. So you just never know. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And then what I'm hearing is really like individual parent voices could, and then could become multiple big parental voices, and then they could become policy change at the school level and also at the city level. So hopeful. But it's hard work, right? So I think the next question, you alluded to it a little bit when it comes to strategies of mobilizing parents. Could you please share more examples of the strategies that you use to build connections, which you all said were really, really important for the work that you do? The strategies that you use to build connections and mobilize parents in the community. We'll start with
So one, also my apologies, I had to look at my phone, I had aftercare calling, but 2 minutes away apparently, so, okay, got that settled. We are always parent. We are always parent, okay. So one thing I can say, I did actually, I said, let me bring visuals. So going back to Teaching for Change and the work that I was involved in, and will always be tremendously proud of. You might be in one of these pictures. I didn't need to go back to you might be in some of these pictures. So these are two of the booklets that Teaching for Change put together, 2 of the publications based on the work. These are informed by more than 15-20 years of parent organizing here in DC. This we specifically made around the model of doing that monthly meeting with the principal. And again, how to do that from a community organizing approach. I heard you talk about pedagogy. I don't know who in here has been through Paulo Freire, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, popular education. So we had a popular education approach as well. The lived experience of our parents and families is valid forms of knowledge. And if you can connect that to policy, Because policy is often a foreign language for people, no matter what language they speak. And, I tell people all the time, there's nowhere, just as a parent, like you become a parent, there's nowhere you go and people are like, here is the explanation of the DC education system. So a lot of it is really we have learned, sort of as we've gone. Okay, so strategies for how to do it. So one, I will go ahead and say these are still on the Teaching for Change website. They're like $5 and $10 to download. I'm gonna encourage you to do that to continue to support the organization's work. Can't recommend this highly enough, but hearing who's all in the crowd, one of the first things I will say is just sort of start wherever you are. Okay, if you're a classroom teacher, start making those connections with the families that are in your classroom. If there is some type of monthly gathering or meeting or event at the school, pop by and say hi. Parents notice when the teachers pop by, even to just say, hey, I'm Miss such and such, I'm Mr. such and such. Like people know that, like they notice that, and they really do respect and appreciate that. So wherever you are, just any organizer, start with where you're at, right? Start with where you're at. And then especially as your interest continues to kind of carry you, hey, let me go sit on this meeting. Like I said, there are a number of groups around town that are doing work, including with educators. So really do encourage you to do that. But in terms of some of the specific strategies, as much as you can build a rapport with people, particularly around their children. One thing I will say for educators, one of the best meetings that we used to help also coach teachers on how to do like grade level meetings with parents. We call them grade level dialogues. You may have heard of academic parent teacher team meetings, APT team meetings. So similar sort of concept. And one of the best meetings that in 10 years of being in out of school ever saw was the third grade parents were sitting with third grade teachers. And I think the icebreaker they did was, to sort of tell us something that, makes you smile about your child, right? Get people to talk about their kids. Okay, I may not feel like I'm an expert in this, that, and the other, but start give me to talk about my kid and not just what their score was, right? Because my kid and my score and their score are not the same thing. And so they went around. It was really nice because for the teachers, it helped kind of round out. If somebody was like, oh, I've noticed that is a leader in this. And then one of the parents said, well, tell us something that makes you smile about our kids. And to listen to the teachers actually go through and be able to talk about the students, not even just as students in this, but just as kids. Like, I mean, it's just all the walls drop. All the walls, sort of between the roles dropped. And it was really, this was a group of people who were here to talk about the children that we have in common. So just get used to it, because then that starts to create the kind of conditions, where then people might say, oh, I actually did have this question about the homework, or I noticed this, or, where can I go to figure out, like, I don't know where to go to figure out summer camp. Like, you would be surprised sometimes the little things. So when you start to sort of like make that connection, I tell you, you don't have to be people's best friend, but when you make yourself open to people, and when you show and take interest in sort of them and in their kids and in things that are going along, you will start to notice, and you'll start to kind of identify not only what's going on, but where you can start to plug in. And organizing and family engagement are not the same thing. There's overlapping, but we're talking about parent organizing. Okay, organizing work is really about building power, and there's a difference between organizing and advocacy. Right, advocacy is where kind of you're jumping out, but organizing work is around building power, and any type of building power work is going to involve connecting people. Yes. And supporting and building relationships, because those relationships are what help people to open up, and also what helps get through any conflict or tensions or misunderstandings. So, so just from where you are, just really start learning to connect to people how it's right for you. You don't have to be people's best friend. I can't say our grumpy PE teacher at our school, who is just the grouchiest, and everyone loves him. The parents love him, the kids love him. He is just sort of naturally himself, but like everybody knows he cares. And that's the thing. Like, there's that old saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And then to that extent, the last thing I'll say, again, having kind of been in your shoes and just thinking about where you may be going, really, recognize that we're coming and we're engaging with families, whether we're educators or, just, kind of plugging into the organizing network. We are coming with privilege. We're coming, your education privilege, maybe something from your background, even if you don't feel privileged, if you're in this class here at Georgetown, you are coming with some form of privilege. Okay, and so there are power dynamics within that. And it's also been an important part of the work. Is if you really are interested in parent organizing, you need to get yourself in some community organizing training. Because one of the things that will do is help you to understand power dynamics and how you can mitigate those. Because again, wanting to do well for people or even wanting to do well with people is not the preparation in and of itself for actually supporting and being effective. So, if you're like, I'm right here, you know what I can do? I can do the reading club. And if that's where your lane is, then that's great. Jump into that lane. We've kind of all found/stumbled and in some ways been pushed into our lanes. So I'll say that because a lot of the kind of nuts and bolts, and especially on the family engagement side, I can refer you to that. And if you don't have a link, then I'll send you a link so people can find it. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Repeat the question.
The question is, what are some of the strategies that you use to build connections and mobilize parents?
Having a cause. So when you have a cause, many will come. Recently with budget cuts, we had a paper. Teachers weren't having paper, so teachers weren't sending homework. Students came home and said, I don't have no homework. Well, why don't you have homework? Teachers don't have paper. Then they're looking for questions. They're calling the office and saying, hey, my son says there's no paper. What does that mean? What are you teaching our kids then if you have no paper? So that was a cost. And when we had our monthly meeting, one of the questions came up and said, hey, our students aren't getting homework because there's no paper. Oh, well, what can we do about it? Let's do something about it. Well, we don't have no money. How much does it cost? We did fundraisers. So then the same parents that had that concern and brought it to the table, those are the ones that will also come up with the ideas on fundraising to hear, what's going on. But those same parents that also have that cost and bringing them together for their cost will also be the ones who can go ahead and testify at budget hearings. Will go ahead and express their concerns. Sometimes expressing it to the principal is not good enough, and you have to go up the channels. Another strategy I use is food. You gotta bring them in with food.
I will come to your meeting if there's food there. We are not judging people who come if there's food.
So that's another thing, and it goes from the organizer of the event, whether it's a teacher or a parent who's doing it, doing a potluck. Many teachers in our school at the beginning of either if it's a parent-teacher conference, the classroom will have a potluck. And each parent is bringing something in as they're coming in. And then you'll have the other classrooms talking about how come they didn't do it. So that will bring parents in the door. It'll open up a conversation. It'll open up what their concerns are, what they see positive, what they see that it's working with the kids. So creating that space for them is important. The parent-principal chats. That's a plus because I have a concern from a few days ago when they didn't open the door at 9 a.m. And I was late to drop off my kid. I'm gonna wait till next Wednesday to meet that principal so I can tell them. The catch is to let these parents know by creating a chat with them, to let them know that they don't have to wait till Wednesday. They can actually, text it, email it, tell someone, whether it's the teacher. I mean, it has to go somewhere before you wait to that meeting. But many parents do show up because it's a meeting with the principal. So they're like, oh, that's like talking to the boss, the manager at a company. I'll just wait to meet them to tell them my concern. Other ways are meeting that cost. Example, at my school, I started a walking bus. That walking bus met the issue of students not going to school because of law enforcement on the streets, intimidating our parents along the route to school or the route back. We started a walking bus. Parents feel comfortable with walking with us to school and also back. So just creating that safe space so they can have that opportunity to be involved.
So again, coming with something somewhat controversial. I think the start of parent organizing is forgetting the fact that they're a parent. And I say that because too often we become parents and that becomes our whole identity. And while I know saying that on the surface can sometimes sound cumbersome or just like this new laundry list of things to do for educators or policymakers or future policymakers, but it could be as simple as just knowing their first name. Calling a parent by their first name opens so many doors. It opens that opportunity to even start to build a relationship where you're not just saying, like in my case, oh, hey, Devin and Carter's mom is no, hey, Katrice. I'm just like, oh, well, hey, like you see me, you know me. Somewhat, it at least makes parents feel that way. And when you are able to build and realign trust, and I say realign because I'm a firm believer that we have all these pedagogies and ideologies that, by third grade, kids need to know how to read. By eighth grade, they should know math and equation and all that stuff. But I'm a firm believer that by second and third grade, kids know how to do school, right? You know what you're going to school and what your expectations are. However, what we don't talk about enough is that the construct of school is inherited. So if a parent had a negative school experience, subconsciously is passed on down to their child. And so there's this misalignment of trust. And so you have to start with knowing that individual as an individual, not someone's mom, not someone's dad, and realigning and repurposing that trust. Because it's one thing to be vulnerable for and as myself, but it takes an even higher level of vulnerability to now share my child fully with you. So it has to start with the parent. So doing that, again, going back to something I said before, and recognizing, assessing parent strengths. What are you good at? Now that I know you as an individual, I know what your day job is. I know what your interests are, because when I know a parent's strength, I know how to best utilize them. If they're willing to have the time and space and opportunity to be utilized. And building capacity. This is your strength, but I hear that you don't know so much about this. For instance, a big struggle for all of us in the change on time, right, is policy. Every time there's a new federal administration, so much changes, especially in the District of Columbia, because we're not a state. We should be a state, but we're not a state yet. So every new presidential regime or, federal administration, so much could change just like this, right? So building parent capacity at the time of change so that they're not behind the change, right? So again, just to recap, treating their parent, humanizing them, building that relationship, realigning trust, and building capacity is the start of all parent organizing.
Can I build, there's something that Katrice touched on that I think really, really needs to, it like really, really sparks something for me that I want to jump in on. On the humanizing people, especially parents, anybody ever felt kind of overwhelmed a bit recently? Okay, all right, you've been a little overwhelming? Yes, okay, so we're parenting on top of, in addition to, all the things that really feel overwhelming. And one of the things that I learned that I really appreciate when you bring community organizing into, sort of your approach, is community organizing rules. There's many rules of community organizing. What the number one rule is depends on who you talk to. Sometimes the number one rule is nobody comes to the meeting if nobody knows about the meeting. So sometimes you have to have your kind of nuts and bolts, your logistics in order. But also a lot of organizers will tell you, you might talk to someone, but it can take at least, oftentimes a minimum of 3 invitations.
Yeah.
Before they might come out. So if you say, hey, come to this, and after that first one, they don't come, it's very, very easy. It's very tempting to, oh, they didn't come, they don't care. Oh, they didn't come, this isn't, and I get on people, I still teach, I do community engagement and teach community engagement courses in the work I do now for district government. I tell people, if you say, okay, we put out the flyer, we scheduled it, we sent out the robocall, this, that, and the other, and they didn't come. Okay, well, we're not going to jump to they don't care. We are never, ever starting from that assumption. It is never a question of caring. We're going to start, if anything, well, maybe the capacity.
The barriers.
Right, what are the barriers? And I've had times too, my goodness, especially during the height of the pandemic. I remember there was one point I was like, why are these teachers sending me messages? It's like, I'm trying to do this, like, why are they even, like, how dare they? And I had to even check myself, like, I just did not have the bandwidth to engage. So one of the important strategies really is just being not just persistent, but consistent. Because I can't tell you how many times talking about, hey, come on out, hey, come on out. We're doing this, we're getting together with principal, coffee, we're doing this, hey, yeah, come on, what's it? I can't tell you how many times I invited uncle or grandpa or just whoever, or dad or your mom, and it's, oh yeah, I'm gonna be there. All right, I'm gonna see you next week. Yes, didn't see them. Oh yeah, and then I didn't see them the next time. But when they showed up in February, we are so glad to have you here.
Yeah.
So, and I do think that is something in particular to parent organizing, is recognizing there are so many things people are juggling. I have parents tell me I missed the meeting because I started going back to school. I can't get involved because getting involved, a lot of parents themselves go on there like, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to show my kids how important this is. And you never know what it is, and we are not ever in a position to judge. Now, I will tell people, especially for your evening meetings, keep in mind, dinner doesn't cook itself. Clothes don't wash themselves and fold themselves. Okay, even the dishwasher requires work. All right, so when people are and parents are taking that time to engage with you, you really need to value that and appreciate it, and don't judge people for what they don't show up to or what we think they should be doing. And that is also how you create the space for people to come in when they know they are welcomed and not judged. Because we've had parents, tell us about how they felt judged by the school and whatnot, especially if your foundation came from one that was negative. So it's really starting from, you never know where people are coming from, and you really always want to just be open and appreciative for the capacity that people are able to get to the issue. And having done parent organizing is, there are a lot of parents who they can be really, really involved sort of at this point, but then life will just life. Like life will just life. And then now that, this and that going on, a lot of putting out other fires, taking in other kids and dealing with this. And so people's capacity can also vary sort of throughout the year. So just really sort of respect, we don't know what we don't know. And as much as we can be opening and welcome and that consistent, because sometimes people are like, man, she's been asking me all year. And they'll say, okay, and I always ask people when they come to meetings, I say, oh, why'd you come today? Just curious, why'd you come today? 9 out of 10 times it was because Mr. Such and Such invited me. Not because of the flyer, not because of the robocall. It was, they would say the exact person who had invited them and who had been inviting them or told them about the meeting. And the 10th time it was because they were upset about something. And they wanted to see the issue resolved. And all of that is works. We can work with all of that so that we can work with people to get to what our shared goals are.
Also on my end, sending flyers home as an invitation. When that child takes that flyer, it's like, Mom, you gotta go to that meeting. My teacher said you gotta go.
Oh, yeah.
And same thing, you ask the parent, like with Breezy, my kid came with this flyer and said I had to be here, so I'm here. Or, there's pizza. My kid wanted to come for the pizza.
Yeah.
We made it here for that. So just that personal invitation is key.
Thank you very, very much. What I'm hearing you all saying is, persistence, consistency, human-like parents. We're all human parents. We all love food. We experience schools differently. Parents probably experience schools differently. Parents probably have different capacities over the years. Parents have different experience with languages, with schools, the linguistic space of schools. Parents have different experience with law enforcement on the streets. So
Yeah.
really just recognize all of that, find many different ways to approach them, to connect with them, to give them the personal invitation, perhaps also give them options to engage in different ways. Maybe just as simple as staying connected, staying informed in a group chat, something like that, to maybe actively showing up, but actively organizing. And also just keep connecting, keep building capacity, and keep building power. Thank you very, very much for showing us that how that's done in DC in the parent community. Let's get to a break. You get your food, and then we'll have about 20 minutes each for Q&A. Where's our hand?
I might want to go up and ask when I find out, so I'll take one. But I think we need to kind of move on.
Wait.
But I'm like, okay. I'm saying, oh, yeah, I would have helped, like, yeah, I'm like, I'm just gonna look at me, like, next week, and then it's like, well, yeah, then it's. Are you sure? Cool. You probably should bring it up. Yeah. How are you? Today. Tell me what? Yeah, oh, nice. After came up today, I was good. I know what fourth grade. I know. You know.
your meetings.
Correct.
Alright, so
You're good, right? Okay, you're fine.
if you have a question, please. Got the floor.
Isn't it nice having food at the event?
Yeah, yeah, I can start. So something I was wondering, and this is, dare I say, almost like a personal leaning question, but for you guys as parents, how do you think your students, like your kids kind of being in school or like aging out of school for some of you, like, do you find that that's impacted kind of the way that you feel about the work, or like just in general, sort of how has that shifted your perspectives on what you're doing?
I could start. It most definitely is the anchor to why I do the work. I'm solely a boy mom, not a single girl, 4 boys. Which I'm raising 4 Black boys in the District of Columbia, like the most marginalized population ever, right? And I have now 2 sons with special needs. My eldest is on the autism spectrum. My 15-year-old freshman in high school, where I wear the green ribbon, was just diagnosed with a chronic kidney disease. So last year, so it's changed the whole trajectory of his education and what that looks like in the classroom space, which I'm an anime nerd and I love comics and all that stuff. So I like to do all of these little things as it pertains to my sons, just like canon events that then are the new catalysts for my new advocacy point. Just based upon some of their experiences and what I see their friends go through and just some of the things, that they'll experience. Like especially my oldest son, like TJ is 16, 6'1". He's been 6
Wow.
since he was 13. I don't understand.
No, you're
Oh my gosh. Don't get me started on the grocery bills. But he's 16 years old, 6'1", has locks. Looking at him, no one knows that he has autism, right? And of course, he's I feel like I'm neurodivergent myself. I feel like all of us with letters find all the other people with letters. So he has a whole clan of letters. And I just look at these young men who are various as far as demographic. There's him, he has Latino friends, he has white friends, he has friends from Bangladesh, and they're all on the spectrum. But when they're outside, folks just see them as these big boys, especially now with what's going on in the city, who may for whatever reason cause havoc, and all they want to do is play Pokemon Go. They're not thinking about any of you. But it does drive all the work that I do to make sure that they're seen for more than what they appear to.
Say for me, I really appreciate that question on like how my perspective has shifted. So, when I taught middle school and when I started doing parent organizing work, I was not a parent myself. The ISO stint was 2006-07 was when I kind of got into work, like right out of undergrad. I started working for Teaching for Change in 2010. That's when I started doing parent organizing work, and then my first child was born in 2013. So I've been in education and in and out of schools, sort of for a bit, and was already, kind of known, and I established myself as a family engagement professional. Once I had kids, that really, really shifted my perspective. And one of the main ways that it shifted it was I was going back and thinking about all those times. I was like, come to the meeting. We want you to read the class. And I was like, my God, I'm just trying to make sure that everybody is there. And if there were moments I was like, man, I really kind of feel bad for my people, But then when I flipped that, it just made me look like in retrospect, even more in awe. Just absolute in awe and impressed by the parents that I had been working with and who showed up consistently. And so many parents, I worked with a number of parents who were directly themselves had immigrated from a lot of Central American countries in particular. There's one school that had this like pocket of families, a lot of families from Mexico that were kind of settling along the 11th Street corridor. Families from Ethiopia and Eritrea, and a lot of families who like parents who really came so their children could have sort of a better life. And for some of the issues that we've already talked about today, in a lot of ways, as individuals were, without stepping into their power, were kind of set up to be disenfranchised in school. Did their voice matter? And then when I really think back about that, and I'm like, they came and they fought for the education that they knew their children deserved, regardless of their education level, regardless of their income level, really kind of regardless of this, that, what other people may have looked at them and seen that they didn't have. They looked and said, this is what my kids deserve. This is what our kids deserve. And so I tell people, like, I really can't get over like just how utterly inspired I really became by a lot of parents who were just so determined, and you could not convince them otherwise that their children did not deserve the best, and they were willing to step up and say, especially when you could support them to do that. And so that was something, looking back when I had my own kids, and I was like, wow, because I could just go do this, and I was going to be involved in their ways. I was always going to be involved, but I was really look back and be like, wow. And then kind of my next kind of juncture came, and like that pushes me forward. I'm like, who am I to sit back? Everything I know more about the DCPS school modernization process than I ever wanted to know. I ever wanted to know. My gosh. Okay. So now I'm not going to sit here with what I know and sort of just be quiet. So that's just, I'm on the L side of my kid's school, local school advisory team. Yeah. So, how would I not continue that work forward, especially seeing, I can't tell you how much they did, like, inspire me. And the next shift that kind of came for me is now my oldest is in middle school. And there's always a conversation among in family engagement, sort of what's the change as parents, when kids go from elementary to middle school, sort of how does family engagement change? And I'd only been able professionally to really do work at the elementary school level. At schools like Brightwood, when it was pre-K to 8, we had middle school, but it is different. But I never could really quite put my finger on it. But I have a 6th grader now. I am so much more involved on a day-to-day basis with my 6th grader than I ever was involved in elementary school. And I am actually really amazed by that, because we try to keep track of all these classes, the assignments. I took aftercare for granted. When you're elementary school, you just pick them up by 6. Middle school, no. When that bell rings at 3:15, your child will be out on the steps unless they have an activity. Okay, what do you have going on Monday? What do you have going on Tuesday? What is this announcement? What is that? Like, I'm trying to keep up.
As a middle school charter leader, I call it the Bermuda Triangle of life.
It is mine.
And you might make it to Bermuda. You never know.
And so now it's like, it's actually like really surprising. And then it's also balancing that, like, she has to learn to advocate for herself. She has to learn to this. So it's more coaching. It's not just the reading. It's not just the keeping in touch with the teacher. And, we're keeping her, she's going to make the choices that she's going to make, but she's going to be on track and prepared to go to college.
The autonomy.
For sure. And so now it's like, how do you set them up for that? What are not just the choices we need to make as parents, but what are the opportunities? I'm thinking ahead to summer. How do we use summer as opportunities and kinds of different programs? What do we need to be ready for? So, and then even still, like, what's going on with the school? What is needed and how can we support? So it is actually really, really surprised me how much I was not prepared for, like the real difference in transition from when they go from the elementary school to the middle school. So I think by the time we get to high school, I'm not going with it, because I'm not even calling y'all. So, yeah, I know it's like
Not as bad in middle school.
Yeah, each stage is different, but kind of going back to a lot of perceptions that people have about parents, especially Black parents, parents of color, parents in communities that tend to have lower incomes. People are so much more involved than and just how we can really actually honor and support what we don't see. Because sometimes, let me tell you what, sometimes getting to school was the victory for the day. Sometimes that was the victory for the day. And that I did not have as much of an appreciation for when I was doing the work of organizing parents before I had kids myself. You don't have to have kids to do this work effectively, but it definitely did give me a new appreciation and new perspective.
On my end, being the first child of immigrant parents, language barrier was very high in my family, so therefore I was the translator. I was the one who attended all of my younger brother's meetings, so I was always translating for my parents, sometimes to benefit myself or them. Of course. You know. So when it came time for me, so when it came time for me to be a parent, it was like, oh, I want in. You know, I started as pre-K 3. Okay, let's see how the school functions right now. Pre-K 4, that's when I started getting involved. You know, one of the things I've learned throughout is that the parents that will be most available, pre-K 3, 4, kindergarten, and maybe up to second grade. After that, parents are comfortable with allowing their child to walk to school with someone else, or, you know, find other programs to get them to school or back. So therefore, parents tend to go find jobs or, you know, do other use of their time. So I started getting involved with the school, started advocating. As I was volunteering in the hallways, it was like, oh, that's mom. No, the principal gave me the Miss Rubio. So everyone at the school knows me as Miss Rubio. And my children was, nope, from 8:30 to 3:15, you belong to your teacher. And even though I'm in the building, I'm still Miss Rubio. You could call me mom at 3:15. Did my older two complain a lot about being dragged to all the meetings and having to haul things across the street for me? Yes, they did. My oldest now, who is a freshman in college, I started seeing some of his advocacy work at the high school level, and he was doing back end. I was a community representative, which is the PTA role led me there. Made it to community rep, but I've met a lot of council members and just, you know, made those connections. My child was emailing council members because, oh, there were mom friends, about the phone policy. That was the latest word, was the phone policy.
I am not surprised.
The catch is that I didn't find out about his work through him. He would talk about these subjects and, you know, the issues and whatnot. And I would tell him, you know, he would brainstorm me. I point him in the right direction. I didn't know he was actually doing it. Until a teacher said, you may want to come and see your son present. Oh, said present what? He has invited the council member, Jaleese George, to come and chat about this book. Well, hold on, what? Next thing you know, he's telling me about all the other stuff that he's done. And it's like, dude, how come you didn't tell me? He's like, you're gonna make it a big deal. So I can say it has helped. My kids appreciate it in the long run. They have complained along the way, but they have been very supportive. I think my kids love my advocacy work more than I do to a certain extent because it has benefits. Yep. He is now in college. He had a phone call from a friend who said, hey, I'm trying to get my transcript. I've emailed the school, no response. Hey, mom, do you have so-and-so's number? He's first week in college. I've made certain connections with certain people that I knew he was, you know, eventually going to talk to. His second week of college, mom, did you get Charlie's number? Why do you need Charlie's number? Email it. I know you have it. Just send it over. And I'm like, you're in college, you're an adult, I have nothing to do with you. That the children, you know, found it along my advocacy work. But it is something that I enjoy, and it's a day-to-day for me. now that the teenagers one is out, the other one, she's working her way through finishing high school. I started Girl Scouts. Hey, one more thing, right? So I run a few Girl Scout troops, and those are also very rewarding at the end, just to see the girls. Another reward that I had through my trajectory of advocacy with making those connections with parents at our school is I counted 17 high school seniors that graduated last year with my son. They all came by and gave me a gift card saying thank you for helping my mom navigate this, for helping my mom do this, for helping my mom understand that this program that I was going to go overseas was worth it. So just having that, thank you was super cool.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We have time for one more question with big answers. Tiffany?
Sorry, does anyone else want?
We're good, okay.
A couple of you guys had mentioned this kind of like judgmental piece with engagement and parents not caring. As a former teacher, I saw that a lot with teachers, like assuming that parents didn't care and they didn't want to hear about what was going on and they didn't want to help. Have you dealt with that in your role or as a parent, and how do you break that cycle?
I can quickly start. It was for sure something that I experienced heavily at my LEA, right? Even down to I had certain educators previously tell students, the LEA that I'm one of the leaders at, we are a boarding school, so the students reside there from Sunday through Friday, right? So they're no longer there, but we had previous educators who I would hear say to students, that's why your mom dropped you off, because she doesn't even want to, deal with you, things of that nature. And you're here because your parents didn't want to deal with you at home, which is totally not the case. The mission and vision of our school at all. We're a public charter school. It has nothing to do with maladaptive behaviors, right? But we did attract a certain type of family dynamic. Most of our families were very transient. We had a large population of families that were suffering from homelessness. I mean, the trauma, absolutely ridiculous. Some of the things that these families and these kids had went through. So in one of my, I was telling them that every month I do a meeting with my parents and families called Meet Me Halfway. Instead of like a town hall, I call it Meet Me Halfway. And during one of those sessions, I had my parents do the ACEs, the Average Childhood Experience survey, and then I had them do a trauma walk. So with the trauma walk chart paper, I wrote down big type of traumatic events that may have happened, like fires, your parents separated, incarcerated parent, suffered from homelessness at any point of time, essay, all the things, right? And I had my parents fill that out. Just put a check mark on the paper. Next professional development session, I had my staff do the same thing. I had them do a trauma walk. And after they completed theirs, I then pulled out the parents and the students. And I said, you see how we may only have like 2 to 3 checks on this thing, right? Look at what our students and their families are experiencing. If they have this many barriers, it's never a matter of they don't care. Them entrusting us to put their child in a boarding school may be the thing that has saved all of their lives, because that parent can focus on them as an individual, right? And do what they need to do to heal from some of those traumas. Because they know their child's now safe in a space. And then we bring that together with teaching the students, the parents, and the staff all the same language, going through that same experience, because the kids did the trauma walk as well. So matching all of the data is how we shifted that whole entire narrative.
So I'm gonna jump straight to the sort of how do we address it, which I'm in minutes, but sort of what's off the top. And again, some of that, quite frankly, that was really a lot of the work of teaching for change. is how do we, because what you have to transform systems and people. And the reason is because a lot of the issues and a lot of reasons why there are these pervasive preconceptions and really just quite frankly stereotypes of parents, especially Black and brown parents. And especially here in DC, and especially depending on where you live. And there's research that has shown that actually Black parents, when they've done like national surveys, about ways that you're involving in children's education, there's been surveys that have shown, Black parents having higher participation. But it's, so what are we looking for? And what is particularly visible? So there's, there are things that we have to do where we do have to actually push into teacher training and professional development. People, one of the things I really appreciate about Teachers for Change is because it was a social justice organization, we weren't just, say, here's what we need to do around family engagement. We're just organizing parents. It also came with, we required that we had to have time to do professional development with teachers. We would go through anti-racism. We would go through anti-bias. We have to actually teach people to recognize and to challenge these stereotypes as a part of our humanizing work with families. And also just to say, oh, the parents aren't about, well, let's check that assumption. Okay, because if you actually look, but you can see there are a lot of ways we do see sort of parents involved. Our schools, sort of as they run as systems, there's sort of this expectation. Like I would always get the line Teaching for Change, we expect parents come to back to school night, do parent teacher conferences, read with your kids for 15 minutes a night, right? And get involved with the PTA, the PTO, the basic, there are some sort of set expectations for how parents are, kind of supposed to be seen as being engaged and involved. And that just doesn't work for,
It's archaic.
it's archaic. It really is archaic. It's culturally, it doesn't fit in a lot of ways, and just, so there are some systemic shifts that need to happen. There are shifts that need to happen with people, and then also contextualizing it. She gets back to, training and just like a deeper understanding of these issues. When you say, well, why don't the parents show up? Okay, well, who's working? Who might not even feel comfortable coming outside of their house? Like there are larger systemic issues and historic issues as well that are behind many of the things that we see, and it gets labeled as they don't care. It gets labeled as sort of they're not involved. And quite frankly, that has to be directly challenged. It has to be directly challenged through policy, it has to be directly challenged through systems, and it has to be directly challenged through how we're teaching, preparing, and also supporting our educators. Because when they get opportunities, like real quick, one of the things that we talked about, that's talked about in Between Families and Schools, is we would organize community walks, which is because a lot of teachers, they would drive in, they park at the school, and then they drive home, and they don't really know anything about the community they're in, aside from, kind of what they're hearing or seeing with the students. So we would organize them. We'd have parents come over, like, let's walk around the community, and really that directly would challenge that deficit thinking that many people didn't even realize they had. And they would start to see the assets, and they would start to see the community as the community saw themselves. So it's a pervasive issue. We could give many examples, and quite frankly, it has to be directly challenged. And that's an opportunity for anyone who's doing individual work in schools. It's an opportunity for policy making. It's an opportunity for teacher prep and ongoing professional development.
I'll echo both of them because I know we're kind of.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have some parting words for our future teacher candidates, teacher soon in June, and our policy advocate?
Everyone's a person first. Honestly and truly, that's the start of all of this work. Whether you're looking into parent organizing, whether you are more on the policy and data side, people are people first. And again, everyone is a subject matter expert on themselves, on their kids.
I would say teaching, it's true. The best teachers are always learning. The best teachers are just also good learners. So just try things And also, you never know the seed that you plant. It may sometimes, you'd be surprised how many times you'll parent like, oh yeah, he said hi to me that one time. I like him. Just you really never know kind of the seeds that you're planting or the connections that you're making, but just be learners, especially when you talk about things like you can work in a school and hear people say all kinds of things. And I always encourage people like keep learning about your community, keep learning about your work, being a teacher, and approach people just and things with curiosity. And when you shift your mindset to really sort of a curiosity approach, that helps shift you out of that sort of judgment and kind of preconceived notions, and whether you realize it's there or not. And I tell people things that I was doing, parent organizing in 2012, 2015, not necessarily doing that now, right? So we're always going with learning, society, world's always moving on. So yeah, just continue to be a learner. I would say that's just a lifelong lesson.
My advice is to learn your community. Each school is different, whether it's west of the park, east, or north or south. But feel free to visit them all. You will get different perspectives from each sides of the city. So it is important for you to understand the community and where your students are coming from, where your parents are coming from. That is key to how you be the best teacher.
Well, with that, for our ending this panel discussion, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you for moderating.
Thank you.